Hello everyone, this is Ponder on Weather. In this update, we've got Nicole's massive wind field bringing widespread impacts, and we've got severe weather, tornadoes, and even a blizzard to talk about, followed by the strongest cold front of the season, and things get interesting headed in the next week. So I appreciate all my followers out there and my new followers. If you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns on North America and the tropics, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's get right to the water vapor imagery this morning. We've got a lot to talk about because first and foremost, this is Nicole off the southeast coast really getting its act together and going to be making a beeline towards Florida and making landfall heading into tonight into the overnight hours. At the same time, we have a dynamic trough that's going to be digging in, bringing some severe storms, much colder conditions, and even a very heavy snow event, and even a blizzard up here in parts of the Dakotas. So first, let's highlight Nicole. It is a formidable storm, and what's significant about Nicole is just its massive wind field. This whole area in orange here is depicted on that wind field, and it spreads over 800 miles now. So this is a pretty impressive system for November, but right now it is a strong tropical storm moving west about 12 miles an hour. It's still expected to become a hurricane before landfall, and that's why they've got hurricane warnings out for the Bahamas and along the coastline into Florida. This is going to be widespread impacts with very heavy rain, some tornadoes with it as well, and this will actually spread up the east coast, bringing widespread heavy rain event as we move forward the next couple of days. But as it comes ashore, we are going to be expecting some storm surge with this particular system just north of Miami, spreading into Palm Bay, into Orlando, going all the way up into Jacksonville. But this actually spreads all the way into the portions of the southeast, into portions of Georgia, as well as South Carolina. So anywhere in these pink shaded areas, 2 to 4 feet storm surge. Anywhere in the darker pink shaded areas, that expected to be 3 to 5 feet storm surge, and it is expected to make landfall near the Palm Bay area. They already have some evacuations ordered for that zone. But man, another thing that's going to be with this system is just the impressive wind field and the very high waves coming out of this system. They're maxing out around 33 feet. And look how far these waves spread out, covering multiple states. So this is compliments of that just huge wind field that Nicole will have. It had its subtropical characteristics. Now it's turned tropical, and I do feel it's still going to be increasing a little bit before it makes landfall later on this evening. But there's a cold side to it as well. So we've got numerous winter storm watches and warnings in place for Montana, headed into the Dakotas, and all the way up in northern portions of Minnesota. And there is our first blizzard warning of the season for parts of North Dakota, especially into Bismarck, and then very high winds underneath it. And there are your tropical storm hurricane watches along the coast into Florida. But let's zoom into some of these watches for winter weather updates. And man, places like into Salt Lake City is going to be picking up some heavier snows, going into Idaho Falls, into Bozeman, back into Great Falls, all the way up here to Minot, into Great Forks, as well as Fargo. But there's the bullseye for tonight, heading into some blizzard-like conditions with gusts up to 50 miles an hour. We're talking snow accumulations of 10 to 16 inches, and it's a bona fide blizzard happening going into all day today, and then headed into Friday. So starts Thursday morning and heading into Friday morning. So for those 24 hours, it's going to be pretty nasty outside and could include some whiteout conditions. But it's got plenty of snow on the backside. But out ahead of it in the warm sector, we've got some severe storms to deal with. In fact, they've actually expanded this risk from yesterday, which I thought they would, and lift it a little bit further north into Wisconsin. So we do have that severe storms within the warm sector in this area, and tornadoes are going to be a prevalent system as this becomes ashore. So that's always prevalent with hurricanes going into tomorrow, which basically starts tonight into the overnight hours, extending through tomorrow. We do have that elevated risk for tornadic activity along the coast here in portions of northern, back into say Jacksonville, heading into off the coast of Georgia here, as well as in South Carolina. But then out in the upper plains here, we've got that severe storms into portions of northwestern Missouri, headed into Iowa, and then especially into Wisconsin, where things could get pretty bumpy. So as we head into Friday, that severe threat and that tornadic threat actually lifts further north, going into portions of South Carolina and North Carolina, getting into Virginia. Really all up along the coast here are going to have to be concerned for some severe storms with some high winds, obviously, with this system coming in. And then you could actually see some isolated spin up tornadoes, especially along the coast here, with the remnants of what will be Nicole by then. But it's all complements of this just upper level low, another trough that digged in off the west coast. And out ahead of it, that's where you're going to have that severe threat. So you're literally talking about a hurricane making landfall in Florida while we have tornadoes happening in portions of the upper plains here. And then we got a snow event happening into parts of Montana, and a blizzard going into parts of the Dakotas. And it's a crazy wild Thursday, to say the least. And then we're just all back behind that. We've got that significant coldest temperatures of the season. So here's some temperatures as we head into Thursday. There it is ahead of that system within the warm sector, and you can see all the colder air travels behind it. And we even got our first negative temperatures of the season that's going to be moving in as we behind that significant cold front. But we've got some very heavy snow to contend with, parts of Montana over into the Dakotas, and then even some ice. This is the first significant ice threat as well. So within just where that warm nose is, we're going to have some ice that we're going to have to be concerned about in portions of the Dakotas, but especially getting into northern Minnesota. And then this actually sneaks up into Canada. Some of these accumulations could have to be a half inch in nature, as that system will come into landfall into Florida with that very heavy rain that will eventually spread into Georgia. Feel the effects of that cold front. So if it does happen to reemerge out into the Gulf of Mexico, it's not going to last long, because it's really going to be starting to feel the effects of that cold front, and that will rapidly lift it off to the northeast. But as it makes landfall, here's some preliminary wind gusts. As it makes landfall, it could be up to say 83 miles an hour as it comes ashore, just offshore, clocking at about 90 miles an hour. So it could be, a minimal hurricane. Right now it's a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm, but I am expecting to get elevated at least to 75, could be 80, 85 miles an hour before it actually makes landfall later on this evening into the overnight time frame. But that wind field will spread all the way into Georgia, into the Carolinas, and then lift northward. So it's going to be a windy beach erosion along the coast here, storm surge, and then multiple inches of rain spreading all along the southeast, heading all up into the Ohio Valley, into the northeast. But as it comes ashore, we are going to have to be concerned with tornadoes heading into tomorrow afternoon. Not where it comes ashore, but I think just north of there, we do have that tornadic threat into portions of Jacksonville. That'll spread into along the coastline into Georgia, as well as into South Carolina. And then that tornado threat actually just expands and actually lifts further to the north. Now, by the time we get into Friday timeframe, it'll spread into portions of North Carolina as well as into Virginia, as the remnants will be overhead by then. And there's the heavier rain. So welcome rains coming in for portions of Ohio. This will spread into portions of Kentucky, even into Tennessee, but all on the coast really is expanding into the Carolinas, into Virginia, into the DC area, 1 to 2 inches of rainfall, New Jersey, and getting into portions of Pennsylvania, upstate New York. So this is a pretty widespread event. And then that snow line will be further to the north, spreading up into Canada. And then there's the colder air that will follow. By the time we get into Friday, we could have some scattered showers, chilly showers into portions of Texas, with temperatures in the 50s and wind chills in the 40s. by then into parts of Texas. So you're going to feel that cold front for sure. And then as we get into Saturday morning, that rain event will spread further into the Northeast. So all those areas into the Northeast, getting into New England, are going to be impacted from this system. Not really a wind threat by then, but we are going to be looking at some multiple inches of rain with this particular system. And then the main story behind that will just be the colder temperatures that funnel in by the time we get into Saturday morning, with that freezing line lifting all the way down to further to the south. Widespread hard freeze in Oklahoma and portions of Missouri here with that hard freeze, but you can definitely see the coldest temperatures of the season will filter in, and we've got multiple fronts. So once you feel the effects of this cold front, it ain't warming up anytime soon after that, I can promise you that. So it's a pretty cold week, widespread next week for the entire United States. So, but ahead of it, there is that ice threat we're going to have to be dealing with that potential ½ inch of ice on the roadways in portions of South Dakota and portions of North Dakota, but then getting into extreme portions of Minnesota, but especially as you get into Canada with potential ½ inch accumulations just within that cold sector of this system. But there's your snow line that's going to be filled following with this first initial batch with that snow event. That's why they have all those widespread winter storm warnings and watches out here for a good chunk of Utah, into the Rockies, heading into Wyoming, but especially into Montana. And then we got feet upwards to 1 to 2 feet of snow for good portions of the Dakotas, getting into Minnesota, with that snow band lifting up into Canada. But we do have the rain aspect of it too. So there's your rain swath, a good 1 to 3 inches essentially along from this corridor here into portions of Georgia, getting into eastern portions of Tennessee, eastern Kentucky, getting into Ohio, Pennsylvania, all these areas into the east, Northeast, Ohio Valley, into the New England will pick up a widespread 1 to 3 inches and even some isolated heavier amounts. Then obviously heavier amounts, probably 4 to 5 inches, as this system will come ashore right into portions of, say, Palm Bay into Orlando area, going to be picking up some heavier rains. And then the rains come in for the Northwest, going into the Northwest and along the West Coast with those troughs that'll be coming in. But yeah, things get interesting. This is rare. This is the Climate Prediction Center's latest update, 6 to 10 day temperature anomalies. And this is a probability, which this widespread 80%, this huge area purple here, which is kind of rare. And it's definitely really rare. I haven't seen this in a long time, guys, that the entire lower 48 is below average for a good solid 4 to 5 days. That is hard to do. Either side of the picture, warm or cold, it's very difficult to do. That just goes to show you this dynamic setup that's setting up. Luckily, it's November, because if it was January, this would be some significant cold blast. But we're talking good 15 to 20 degrees below average temperatures. So it's going to be a chilly week, to say the least, next week, and a much more interesting week, because the Southern Oscillation Index goes negative, and it's had a dramatic drop, and that's going to activate that low level jet stream. And as these systems come across, we'll have multiple cold fronts moving in. And by the time we get into Monday, we've got that cold air in place. We've got a vorticity traveling over portions of Texas and Oklahoma. We could be looking at some snow ringing out in portions of the Texas Panhandle. I can't even roll out at this point with that cold air in place. We could be looking at some snow into portions of Oklahoma. Yes, you heard me right. I think it's going to be just a chilly rain, probably temperatures into the low 50s, if not in the 40s, all day long for a good chunk of Texas, with that chilly rain falling down further to the south. But I do feel things definitely get interesting, because this is a very dynamic setup with the negative EPO, these well above average temperatures as we head into next week for Alaska. And that flow is consistent with this cold pool centered right over the heart of the United States. And that's why the Climate Prediction Center has that widespread cold heading into next week. And as this southern branch gets active, yes, things do get interesting. If we take a look at the upper levels, going up in the, because I look at the atmosphere at all different levels, and this is about 5,000 feet up in the atmosphere. This is some significant cold air. Trust me, this for this time of year, looking at temperature anomalies, 25 to 30 degrees below average up in the upper atmosphere at 5,000 feet. So that's got some cold stuff that will sink to the surface, and widespread with an active storm track to the south. Things could get interesting. We'll have to fine tune this, but this is kind of gives you an overall, obviously don't take this verbatim, but this kind of gives you an overall storm track. There will be a further southern storm track next week, and we'll have to see how much of that colder air pushes further south. And then once it comes across where the demarcation line is, where snow is going to be flying, but I'm pretty confident it's going to reach the Texas Panhandle and portions of Oklahoma and Arkansas, and this will be swinging up the East Coast too. So expect at least some snow next week, and I'll be fine-tuning this within that cold air, as we'll have multiple systems be coming across from the northwest, diving down into the central plains, and then heading up the eastern seaboard. And then to the north of there, we'll have to watch that snow line move, as just how far south it's actually going to move. So, hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.